There's a moment quiet, almost imperceptible, when you notice that the ache in your heart isn't really about them. It begins like a subtle tug, a whisper beneath the noise of longing. You think you're missing someone, craving their presence, the way their voice made you feel seen. But as the days pass and the silence lingers, something deeper emerges, a suspicion, soft and unsettling. What if this loneliness isn't about them at all? You start to feel the echo of your own voice in the void. It's not their absence that haunts you, it's your own. The version of you that you keep trying to outsource to someone else. The you that you've been too afraid to sit with. The one you hope they'll love so you don't have to. It's disorienting. This revelation, because love is supposed to heal, right? It's supposed to fill the gap, soothe the wound, silence the doubts. But what if love, at least the way you've been chasing it, has been a way to avoid something much more intimate yourself? You start tracing back every crush, every heartbreak, every moment you hoped someone would finally stay. What were you really looking for? Safety validation proof that you are enough. The ache has always had a message, but you didn't want to hear it. You wanted it silenced by someone else's affection, because facing the truth meant facing your own absence. And that's terrifying, because if it's not about them, then it's about you, and you don't know yet how to hold yourself without collapsing. Jung said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not just the polished parts, the ones others applaud, but the jagged edges, the unmet needs, the desperate hungers that beg to be fed. You've hidden those parts, hoping someone else would come along and make you forget they exist. But they haven't. They sit in the shadows, watching, waiting. And now, you finally see them. You see the child version of you abandoned emotionally or physically, still waiting by the window for someone to come back. You see the teenage you, bending yourself to be liked, because rejection felt like annihilation. You see the adult you, still carrying those ghosts into every relationship, hoping that this time will be different. But it never is. Not because people are cruel, but because you're still unavailable to yourself. And so you call in others who reflect that. People who aren't quite ready, who keep you at arm's length, who love you in ways that feel familiar, but never fulfilling. This isn't punishment, it's pattern. It's the psyche repeating itself until you finally turn inward and ask, what part of me am I still hiding from? That question haunts you now, but it also invites you. It invites you to step out of the endless pursuit of someone else and into the quiet, radical journey of meeting yourself. Not as a means to an end, but as a beginning. Because this longing you feel, it's not just for connection, it's for presence, your presence, the part of you that says, I will not abandon myself again. I will not silence my needs for fear of being too much. I will not contort to be chosen. I will choose myself. It's a fragile beginning. You still want them to text. You still replay old conversations and wonder what could have been. But beneath that, a deeper voice is waking up. It's not loud yet. It trembles, but it speaks with an ancient truth. They were never the source of your love. You were. This is where it starts, not with another person, but with the courage to sit in the ache and not run, to feel the emptiness and not rush to fill it, to let the loneliness teach you instead of torment you. Because this ache is not a wound, it's an opening. And from that opening, everything can begin again, not from need, but from wholeness, not from fear, but from truth, not from chasing, but from becoming. So now you ask yourself softly, gently, bravely, if I stopped running from my own heart, what might I find waiting for me there? There's a moment when you finally look back at your relationships, not as random events, not as accidents or fate, but as mirrors. And in that moment, everything shifts. You begin to see patterns, not just in who you loved, but in why you loved them, in who stayed distant, who was unpredictable, who couldn't give you what you asked for. At first, it feels like blame, like you're accusing yourself of inviting pain, but it's not blame, it's revelation. You begin to understand that the people you've attracted weren't just people, they were messages. They were reflections of the very relationship you had with yourself, the one you didn't even realize you were having. When you didn't believe you were worthy of consistency, you found people who confirmed it. When you feared being fully seen, you were drawn to people who kept themselves hidden. When you doubted your lovability, You clung to people who needed convincing. And still, you kept asking, why do I attract the same kind of partner over and over? But the deeper question was, what part of me is calling them in? Carl Jung wrote that we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. This isn't just poetic, it's psychological. The psyche seeks integration. It longs to make conscious what is unconscious. And what is unconscious in you will continue to manifest outwardly until you finally see it. So you begin to look inward, not to shame yourself, but to know yourself. You notice the part of you that always bends first, that softens your truth to keep the peace. You see how you shrink when someone pulls away, as if your smallness will keep them close. You feel how fast you run to prove your worth, as if love must always be earned. And here's the truth, they weren't doing that to you. You were doing that to you. They were simply playing a role you had written long before you ever met them. You're not broken for this. You're not foolish or naive. You're human. You built a survival system, a way to cope, to protect, to find love the only way you knew how. But now you're waking up to it, and once seen, it cannot be unseen. So you ask, if I believed I was already enough, who would I no longer chase? This question isn't just hypothetical, it's transformative. Because in asking it, you begin to break the spell. You begin to see that you're not just attracting people, you're teaching them how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you betray your own needs to keep someone close, they will follow your lead. If you hide your pain behind a smile, they will assume you're fine. If you beg for love with your silence, they will learn to love your absence more than your presence. But when you turn inward, when you begin to show up for yourself, you stop attracting lessons and start attracting reflections. You begin to walk differently. Your yes means yes. Your no means no. You no longer mistake chemistry for clarity or urgency for love. You don't need someone to save you. You need someone who meets you because you've already done the work of meeting yourself. It won't be immediate. You may still feel the old pull toward people who match your wounds instead of your worth. But with every choice to honor your truth, the pull weakens, and something stronger rises in its place: discernment, inner clarity, a quiet confidence that doesn't beg, chase, or prove. This is how self-love shifts your outer world. It doesn't just change what you tolerate, it changes what you magnetize. The people you once chased no longer feel like home, because your home is now within. And one day, without trying, you'll notice someone new, someone who feels different, not because they're perfect, but because you are different. You're no longer seeking completion, you're offering wholeness. You're not handing over your heart hoping it won't be dropped. You're sharing it because it's already safe in your own hands. And when they look at you, you'll see no desperation in their eyes, no grasping, no projections, just recognition, because they too have met themselves. So ask yourself, softly, sincerely, what would it mean to become the version of you who no longer needs to be chosen because you already choose yourself every day? Sometimes, the person you fall hardest for is the one who never truly sees you. Sometimes, the connection is intoxicating not because it's healthy, but because it's familiar. There's something ancient, almost mythic, in the pull toward them. You feel electric, activated, and yet, underneath that spark lives a hollowness, a hunger. You convince yourself it's love, but it's not. It's recognition of a wound, of a part of you you've buried, of the shadow lover within. Carl Jung said the shadow is everything you refuse to see in yourself, but it doesn't disappear. It finds its way into the people you desire, into the traits you chase, into the patterns you can't seem to break. That person who makes you feel unworthy, they reflect the part of you that already believed you were. That person who won't commit, they echo the part of you that never fully committed to your own heart. The shadow lover is seductive, not because they are whole, but because they mirror your fragmentation. They let you stay hidden while pretending to be known. They activate your fears in a way that feels like passion. But what you're really feeling is old pain, dressed in new skin. You become addicted to the chase, to the fantasy, to the almost love that promises everything but gives nothing. And deep down, you know it's not real, but you stay, because walking away would mean walking into yourself, and you're not sure what you'll find there. This isn't weakness, It's a coping strategy. It's what happens when love was once conditional, when you had to earn affection through silence or sacrifice. You learned to chase ghosts, not presence, to find value in being chosen, even if you had to disappear to be loved. But now you see it. You see the loop. You see how you project your unmet needs onto someone who was never meant to carry them. You ask them to validate what you've never claimed for yourself. You ask them to heal what only you can hold. And that realization stings, because it means letting go not just of them, but of the illusion that someone else can complete the self you've abandoned. There's grief in this. Grief for the love you didn't receive, for the pieces of you that learned to wait, to shrink, to ache. But there is also liberation, because what you once called love, you now recognize as self-neglect in disguise. The shadow lover is not your enemy. They are your teacher. They show you where you're still fragmented, where you still betray yourself, where you still equate chaos with intimacy and confusion with chemistry. So you ask yourself now, what am I trying to reclaim through them that I haven't yet given myself? That question is a key. It opens a new door, one where you begin to turn inward with tenderness, where you begin to hold the parts of you that feel too needy, too intense, too broken, and you begin to whisper, "You are enough, even now." This is how you reclaim power, not by controlling another, but by becoming conscious of the roles you play: the victim, the fixer, the pursuer, the abandoned one. You see them not with judgment, but with compassion, because those parts did what they had to do to survive. But you are not surviving anymore. You are awakening, and in that awakening, you realize that love is not a battlefield or a prize to be won. Love is a mirror, and the clearest reflections come when you're no longer hiding from yourself. So you stop chasing those who can't meet you, not because they're bad, but because they no longer reflect who you are becoming. And maybe you're not quite ready to let go completely. That's okay. Healing isn't a clean cut, it's a slow unraveling. But even in the ache, something in you softens. A quiet voice that says, "I see you. I love you." You don't need to lose yourself to feel wanted anymore. The shadow lover fades not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because without them, you wouldn't have seen where you still needed to return to yourself. And now you do. So breathe and ask yourself, not what you need from them, but what is my own heart still asking me to feel? There's a quiet myth that follows you through life, a whisper passed down through stories, songs, and daydreams that one day, someone will come and complete you, that when you find them, your person, your soulmate, you will finally be whole. You've believed it. You've carried that image inside like a secret flame. Maybe it looked like someone who understood your silences, someone who knew how to hold your hand without you asking, someone who never left. And for a while, the fantasy kept you going. But now perhaps after another goodbye, another disappointment, you begin to see through the illusion. You begin to feel the weight of it, the burden of expecting someone else to do what you have not yet done for yourself. The idea that another human being can complete you is seductive. It makes the loneliness feel temporary. It makes the inner work feel avoidable. But it's also a trap, because if you believe you are incomplete, you will always attract someone who confirms it. You will hand them the key to your worth and hope they don't drop it. You will shapeshift to be what they want, hoping that love will follow. You will ignore red flags, abandon your needs, and stay too long because the myth said they were the missing piece. But there are no missing pieces, only forgotten ones. The love you seek from others is not wrong, it's human. But it's not the whole story. Because what you truly crave is not just connection, it's recognition. It's seeing yourself reflected in someone else's eyes without having to earn it. That kind of love does exist, but it doesn't come when you are still begging someone else to fill the void. It comes when you stop fearing the void altogether. Carl Jung spoke often of individuation, the process of becoming whole unto yourself. Not perfect, not isolated, but integrated. To carry both your light and shadow. To no longer need someone to complete you, but to complement the fullness you've already become. You've tasted the alternative. You felt the heartbreak of giving too much, too soon, too often, of mistaking intensity for intimacy, of trying to merge with someone in the hope that their love would erase your emptiness. But merging is not union, it's erasure. True connection requires two whole beings, two sovereign selves coming together not out of need, but out of resonance, not to escape themselves, but to expand themselves. So you begin to turn inward, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You start noticing how often you abandon your needs to keep someone close, how often you stay silent to keep things smooth, how often you fear being too much, so you become less. And then you pause, you breathe, you let the silence stretch. You ask yourself, if no one ever came to complete me, what would I do with all this love I've been holding back? That question unravels you, but it also awakens you. You start to pour love into the parts of you you once outsourced, into the inner child who still feels invisible, into the teen who learned to perform for praise, into the adult who keeps asking, is this enough? Am I enough? And slowly, the ache softens, the hunger quiets. You no longer look to others to prove your worth, you begin to remember it. This is not the end of love, it's the beginning, because now, you love with open eyes. You don't fall into someone, you stand beside them. You hold your shape. You ask for what you need without shame. You give without sacrificing your own center. And from this space, something beautiful emerges, a readiness, not for someone to complete you, but to meet you fully, wholly, without the masks. The illusion fades, not because it was foolish, but because you outgrew it. So now, when the old story whispers that you're missing something, you answer with truth. I am not missing. I am arriving. And then you ask yourself, what does it mean to love from fullness instead of fear? There comes a point, quiet and unremarkable on the surface, when the ache of constantly looking outward becomes too loud to ignore. You get tired, not just of others, but of the chase, the waiting, the pretending you're fine when you're anything but. You start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop asking others to see you and start learning how to see yourself. So you pause, you breathe, you sit with the silence that used to terrify you. And in that stillness, something strange begins to happen. The mirror turns. Instead of asking why they left, you ask why you stayed when you already felt unseen. Instead of wondering if they ever loved you, you ask if you ever truly loved yourself in their presence. And instead of blaming the universe for giving you lessons wrapped in heartbreak, you begin to wonder what part of your soul begged for those lessons because it knew they were the only way you'd come home to yourself. You begin the quiet process of self-witnessing, not analyzing, not fixing, just watching. You notice how you talk to yourself after a mistake. You notice how often you silence your own needs to be liked. You notice how foreign kindness feels when it comes from within. At first, it hurts, because the truth isn't always gentle. You realize how long you've abandoned yourself trying to be lovable, how many times you've said yes when your body screamed no, how you've measured your worth by how much you could endure without breaking. And now you see this wasn't love, it was survival. It was a mask you wore so well, even you forgot it wasn't your face. Carl Jung taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is one of those moments. The fate you've blamed on bad timing or unavailable partners starts to look less like coincidence and more like a pattern, your pattern. But now you're becoming conscious. You're no longer rushing to fill the silence with someone else's voice. You're learning to listen to your own, and what you hear isn't always pretty, but it is real. You hear the part of you that feels too much, too needy, too fragile. You hear the voice that says, don't ask for more, or they'll leave. You hear the echo of a childhood where love was earned, not given. And instead of turning away, you lean in. You hold that voice. You speak back to it gently. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to want. You are allowed to take up space. This is not self-help. This is self-remembrance. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to be less, before you learned to perform, before you equated being chosen with being safe. It's tender work. Some days, it will feel like nothing's changing, like you're just sitting with pain instead of healing it. But healing isn't always loud. Sometimes, it looks like staying present when you want to numb out. Sometimes, It's choosing not to text someone who made you feel invisible. Sometimes it's crying for no reason and letting the tears be enough. And slowly, the mirror reflects something new, not just wounds, but wisdom, not just pain, but power. You begin to see the beauty in your own resilience, the courage it takes to keep your heart open when it has every reason to close. You begin to notice joy that isn't dependent on anyone, moments of peace that arise from within, a softness that doesn't disappear when no one's watching. And then without realizing, you begin to reorient. You no longer live in reaction to others. You live in response to yourself. You make decisions not to please, but to honor. You say no without guilt. You say yes without fear. You become the person you once waited for. And now, when someone comes into your life, you don't ask them to prove anything. You simply watch. You listen. You feel. Because your own inner voice has become clear enough to trust. So ask yourself, gently, what would it feel like to live in a world where my own presence is enough? There's a quiet shift that begins when you stop searching and start becoming, not out of resignation, but out of reclamation. You've spent so long looking outward, scanning the world for the one who will understand you, soothe you, make the ache disappear. But now, the search begins within. You start to ask, what do I long for in another? Maybe it's tenderness. Maybe it's safety. Maybe it's someone who listens, really listens, not just to your words, but to your silences. Someone who brings calm instead of chaos, who knows how to sit beside your pain without trying to fix it. And then, the more important question arises, where am I in relationship to those very things? It's confronting, because you realize how often you ask for what you don't yet offer yourself. You want someone to validate your worth while you still doubt it. You want someone to stay while you keep abandoning your own truth. You want someone to cherish your heart while you handle it like a burden. And suddenly, everything shifts. You stop waiting to be saved. You begin the slow, sacred journey of becoming the partner you've always wanted. It starts small. You speak to yourself with gentleness instead of judgment. You let yourself rest without earning it. You sit with your emotions instead of bypassing them. You become a space where your own pain is safe to land. Carl Jung spoke of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies within each of us. To become whole, we must integrate both. We must learn to hold ourselves in both tenderness and strength, to nurture without losing boundaries, to protect without closing off. You begin to embody this balance. You become both the comforter and the protector of your own heart. You learn to soothe your inner child while standing guard over your adult needs. You become a container not just for others, but for yourself. And the beauty is, this doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. You no longer enter relationships hoping to be rescued. You enter them already full, already seen, already enough. And from that fullness, you give without losing. You receive without guilt. You connect without disappearing. This is the paradox of self-love. The more you hold yourself, the more room you make for real connection, not the kind built on fantasy, but on presence, not built on need, but on shared becoming. You begin to attract differently. The people who once thrilled you with their unpredictability now feel exhausting. The ones who couldn't meet you no longer feel magnetic. Instead, you're drawn to stillness, to kindness, to truth. And when someone new comes into your life, you don't immediately hand over your heart. You hold it gently, you observe, you ask. Does this connection amplify my wholeness, or ask me to fragment again? And if it asks you to abandon yourself, you walk away not because you're unlovable, but because you finally know how deeply lovable you are. This is how becoming changes everything. You are no longer trying to earn a place in someone's life. You are your own home. You no longer rush to prove. You no longer perform. You rest. You breathe. You choose slowly and consciously. You embody what you once yearned for. You are now the safe space, the calm presence, the honest witness, the one who doesn't leave when things get hard. You have become the love you kept seeking. And now, when love comes to you, it's not to fix or complete you. It's to walk beside you, to grow with you, to honor you without dimming your light. So ask yourself, with soft curiosity, what version of me would I fall in love with, and how can I become them? Starting now, There's a part of you that has always felt like something's missing, not just in relationships, but in how you move through the world. You sense an imbalance, a quiet dissonance. At times, you felt too open, too vulnerable. Other times, too closed off, too hard, and in the spaces between. You've wondered why no love ever seems to fully land or fully last. Carl Jung spoke of this inner polarity, the anima and the animus, the feminine and masculine energies that live within us all, regardless of gender. These forces aren't about gender roles or outer expression. They are inner realities. The anima is the inward pull, the intuitive, emotional, receptive force. The animus is the outward thrust, the logical, decisive, protective force. Most of us over-identify with one and suppress the other. And in that imbalance, we search for what we've disowned in others. You may have sought safety in a partner because you had not yet developed your own inner protector. Or you may have longed for softness because you had buried your tenderness beneath layers of survival. So your relationships played out this inner split. You either clung or withdrew. You chased or ran. You overgave or refused to receive. Not because you were flawed, but because you were fragmented, and the psyche seeks wholeness through projection. So you kept falling in love with your missing pieces. But what if the love you're seeking isn't about another person completing you, but about you integrating your own inner opposites? This is the dance, the sacred inner courtship, to meet your own anima, if you've ignored her, to invite your own animus, if you've feared him, to stop outsourcing your sensitivity or your strength, and to embody both, together, within. You begin by noticing where you feel imbalance. Are you always doing? Pushing? Controlling? Maybe your inner feminine is tired, buried, waiting for permission to just feel. Or maybe you're always flowing, feeling, dreaming, but struggle to act, to decide, to say no. Your inner masculine may be asleep, still carrying the guilt of past force or pain. This isn't about fixing, it's about listening. You turn inward and ask, what energy have I abandoned in myself? You begin to reclaim it, gently, not by forcing, but by welcoming. You let your inner feminine cry without shame, speak without apology, soften without fear of being dismissed, and you let your inner masculine take the lead when needed. Hold structure, protect your boundaries. Say, this is enough. As you practice this, something incredible happens. Your nervous system starts to trust you. Your energy stabilizes. You stop swinging between extremes in love. You no longer seek someone else to play the role of what you won't embody. Instead, you meet others from a place of balance. You don't overextend to be loved. You don't collapse to be held. You hold yourself, and in that self-containment, love begins to find you not to complete you, but to reflect what you've already found. This integration is not loud. It won't be celebrated from the outside, but inside. You'll feel it, in your calmness, in your clarity, in how you speak your truth without trembling, in how you let yourself receive, not because you're needy, but because you're worthy. And when someone stands in front of you, offering love, you will no longer hand them a role in your unfinished play. You will offer them presence. You will ask not, will you fix me, but will you dance with me as I am, as you are? This is sacred union, not just with another, but with yourself. So now, you ask, where in me have I disowned my own strength or my own softness, and how can I begin to reclaim both? Starting today, there comes a moment, usually after the tears have dried and the phone no longer lights up with their name, when you stop asking why they hurt you, and you start asking what their presence awakened in you. It's not immediate. At first, there is only pain, the kind that sits heavy on your chest and turns silence into thunder. You replay conversations. You dissect your words. You try to pinpoint the exact moment they slipped away, but no amount of analyzing can undo the ache. And yet, slowly, a shift begins. You start to sense that this wasn't just heartbreak, it was initiation. Not because the pain was noble or romantic, but because it cracked something open in you, something ancient, something waiting. Carl Jung said that what remains unconscious will rise up again and again until it is finally integrated. The people who've broken your heart weren't sent to destroy you, they were sent to expose what you've been carrying all along. They were mirrors for your most sacred wounds. And you have two choices: keep blaming them, or begin the work of turning toward your pain with the one thing it always needed: your presence. So you do. Slowly, tenderly, you turn inward. You find the root of the wound, not in the recent goodbye, but in the first one. The first time you felt like too much. The first time love meant shrinking. The first time being yourself came with consequences. And you hold that version of you, not to re-traumatize, but to reparent. You speak the words no one ever did. You are safe now. I am here. I won't abandon you again. This is how wholeness begins, not in the absence of pain, but in the willingness to feel it fully, without judgment, to stop gaslighting your own hurt, to stop telling your younger self to get over it or be strong. You don't need strength right now. You need softness. You learn to sit with your emotions like honored guests. Grief, anger, fear, they are not enemies. They are messengers. They are the language of your soul, trying to speak what your mind has silenced for years. And as you listen, something miraculous happens. You no longer fear your feelings. You no longer rush to distract or numb. You breathe with them. You let them rise and fall, trusting that they will pass. And they do. With each wave that crests and crashes, you reclaim a piece of yourself, a truth, a boundary, a buried desire. You become more you than ever before, not in spite of the wound, but because of it. You begin to see your past not as a story of abandonment, but as a story of return. Each heartbreak, a doorway back to yourself. Each ending, an invitation to choose you again and again. You stop defining yourself by what you lost. You start honoring who you became in the aftermath. And the people who come into your life now, if they cannot sit beside your healed wounds with reverence, you let them pass, because you've done too much work to be dimmed again. This is what real self-love looks like. It's not a mantra. It's not a bubble bath. It's a deep devotion to yourself. Born from pain that you no longer run from, it's making space for your shadow without shame. It's showing up for yourself on the days no one else does. And from this place, love changes. It becomes less about finding the perfect person and more about becoming someone who never leaves themselves behind. So now, you ask, not with urgency, but with quiet curiosity. What parts of me have I only dared to meet because of what broke me open, and how can I love them forward from here? There's a subtle power in self-love that most people miss. It's not in the declarations, not in the affirmations taped to your mirror. It's in the energy you carry when you walk into a room, when you speak, when you stay, when you leave, when you look someone in the eye and know without needing proof that you are already enough. You begin to realize that love, real love, is not something you attract by force. It's something you radiate. And when you finally stop trying to be lovable and start simply being love, something changes. The people around you feel it, even those who can't name it. They sense the difference in your stillness, in your boundaries, in the way you no longer perform to be wanted. You no longer bend your truth into something easier to digest. You don't overshare hoping someone will hold your pain. You hold it yourself, and that quiet strength becomes your magnetism. Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That is the essence of self-love, not just liking yourself, but embodying your essence without apology. You begin to notice the shift in how others show up. The ones who once kept you waiting now fall away. The ones who only loved the version of you that was useful no longer feel aligned. And in their place, people arrive who meet your gaze without flinching, who see you not just the polished parts, but the wholeness, the wildness, the truth. It's not magic, it's resonance. When you love yourself, you stop needing to be chosen, and that changes the frequency of your presence. You no longer act from fear. You no longer settle for breadcrumbs and call it affection. You no longer tolerate half-hearted love because you are no longer half present with yourself. You speak differently now. You ask for what you need, not to test someone's love, but to honor your own voice. And when someone cannot meet you there, you do not make excuses. You do not try harder. You let go. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough not to abandon yourself. This is a quiet revolution, a shift so deep it doesn't need to be broadcast. Your life becomes your message. Your peace becomes your boundary. Your joy becomes your standard. And when someone asks, "What changed?" you don't say, "I found someone." You say, "I found me." That is the true turning point, when love is no longer something you pursue, but something you are. You don't ask others to complete the narrative. You invite them to witness it, to walk beside it, but you are no longer handing over the pen. You may still long for connection. That's human, but it's a clean longing now, not driven by lack, but by desire, not driven by fear, but by expansion. And when the right person does appear not perfect, but present, you'll know, because they won't be drawn to your wounds. They'll be drawn to your wholeness. They won't try to rescue or possess. They'll meet you as equals on sacred ground. And the dance of love will feel less like grasping and more like flowing, less like proving and more like remembering. Because when you love yourself, deeply and without condition, you teach the world how to treat you. You write a new contract, not of silence or shrinking, but of truth, reverence, and mutual becoming. So ask yourself, if I embodied the kind of love I seek, what would change about how I move through the world? There's a point on this journey when you stop pushing, you stop striving, you stop chasing every flicker of attention, every glimmer of potential love, as if it might finally fill the space inside you, and something remarkable happens. You become still. Not passive, not numb, but inwardly aligned. You're no longer reaching for love with desperate hands, you're inviting it with open presence. And this is when it finds you, not because you hunted it down, but because your very being became ready. Carl Jung called this synchronicity meaningful coincidences that arise not through control, but through alignment. And now, you begin to see it everywhere, not just in romance, but in life. The right people seem to arrive when you've let go of needing them. The right words fall into your lap. The right path appears not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped resisting who you are. This is what happens when you choose yourself, fully. You no longer carry the heavy energy of, "I hope they like me." You now live in the quiet knowing of, "I already love me." You don't audition for affection. You don't contort your truth to be digestible. You speak clearly. You act deliberately. You exist unapologetically. And because of this, something beautiful unfolds. You begin to magnetize people and experiences that reflect your wholeness. Not your wounds, not your scarcity, but your truth. It's not always romantic. Sometimes it's a friend who sees you instantly. Sometimes it's a stranger who reminds you of something you forgot. Sometimes it's someone from your past returning with new eyes, meeting you as the version of yourself you've worked so patiently to become. And when love comes, it doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like exhale, like recognition, like two sovereign souls standing side by side, not needing to complete each other, only choosing to walk together for however long they may. This kind of connection doesn't thrive on drama. It thrives on presence, on emotional fluency, on the ability to sit in silence and still feel understood, on the sacred trust that comes not from promises, but from consistency. And if you've done the work, if you've met your own shadow, held your own heart, integrated the pieces you used to scatter for approval, then you'll know how to receive this love without sabotaging it. You'll know how to remain rooted, even as the winds of closeness stir old fears. You'll know how to love without losing. This is not the end of your journey. There is no end. But it is the beginning of something new, a life built not around being chosen, but around choosing your values, your peace, your truth, choosing love, not as a survival strategy, but as a conscious offering. You no longer chase synchronicity, you live in tune with it. You trust that what is meant for you cannot be forced. You trust that rejection is redirection. You trust that when you hold yourself in love, the world rises to mirror it. And so you breathe, softer now, you love, clearer now, you exist, freer now. And you ask yourself, if I am no longer waiting for love to find me, what new life can I now create from the love I already carry within me? So here you are, quiet, whole, at peace, not because everything worked out as you once planned, but because something deeper emerged, a return to yourself. You're no longer lost in the maze of who will stay or who will see you. You have become the one who never leaves, the one who looks in the mirror and meets their own gaze without flinching. Let that sink in. You no longer need to be rescued. You no longer need to perform. You no longer need to offer parts of yourself as collateral for affection. You belong to yourself now, and that belonging is more profound than any external approval ever could be. There is a softness here, a slowness. You no longer race toward love. You walk toward it, deliberately, present, rooted. And from this place, the right people come, not because you summoned them, but because your wholeness became an invitation, because the way you treat yourself told the universe, this is how I will be loved. So breathe. Let everything you've sought externally settle gently into your chest, like sunlight through a window. You don't need to reach anymore, you just need to receive. The love you seek is already within you,